Welcome to A Second Helping with Allison Bartow, a wedding photography podcast with a focus on second shooting. For this week's wedding, we have a dark planetarium for the ceremony, carpenter bees in the bouquets, a dad with a DSLR and a flash, and lastly, the bride nixed all of her portraits inside the museum and on the rooftop. This week's wedding is with Dave at the Franklin Institute in Philadelphia. He is one of my very favorite photographers to work with, and I haven't second shot with him in 4 months. So for our game plan, the plan is to park at the Franklin Institute's garage. Dave will meet me there. We'll leave the lighting equipment in the car and then head over to the Sofitel Hotel for prep. I have no idea how to pronounce the name of that hotel properly. When we get back to the venue after portraits around the city, we'll get the lighting equipment then. The bride and groom are both getting ready at the hotel, which is nice. I always like to see the main photographer at the start of the day, and I also prefer meeting the bride early in the day as opposed to right before the ceremony. Typically, when Dave and I start at the same location, I shoot some of the details with him before heading over to the groom. There's always just a lot more going on in bride prep than groom prep, and there are normally more details with her. So we'll see. We're going to do the couple's first look and bridal party portraits at Rittenhouse Square, then head over to Broad Street for the iconic City Hall shot that Dave does really well. The bridal party is 6 and 6, and then there's a total of 5 flower girls / ring bearers, but I have no idea what ages they are. From there, we're going to go to the Franklin Institute, which is a museum with a planetarium. We're going to do bridal party portraits there prior to the ceremony, as well as the family formals. It's not a huge family shot list, so I'm thinking that should be pretty smooth. Dave has noted several exhibits that they liked when they did their tour, so I'm thinking we're most likely going to do some portraits with those exhibits. And then there's also a note about a groomsman shot with drink on the rooftop, so I'm thinking that would be after the ceremony, but we'll see. And then the ceremony is being officiated by the bride's brother, and according to the timeline, it's going to be 20 to 30 minutes long, and that's being held in the planetarium. For the reception, the introductions are just the bride and groom, a standard first dance. The groom is doing a welcome speech. The bride's dad is giving a toast, and then the best man is speaking. So it looks like nothing from the maid of honor. They will have parent dances and then an announced cake cut. And I can't remember the last time I had an announced cake cut. Everybody lately has been doing just the intimate cake cutting. And then there's a CO2 cannon. So I was imagining the pictures you see with the big fluffy clouds on the floor. But after giving it a goog, it looks like they might be actual handheld cannons. So Dave probably has more details on that. And then for night shots, we have steps and roof listed. Sunset is at 8:19, and we have an estimated finish time of 10:30. So that leaves plenty of time to get those done. Concerns, my city classics, the drive, will there be traffic, an accident, road closures, a surprise parade. Then parking. So I like to park as close to where I'm going to end the night as possible. So I try to plan which garage I'm going to use and then also have a backup plan if that garage doesn't work. And we all remember how the last city wedding, Broad Street was closed and I had to reconfigure. Gear. So in most cases, I need to be able to transport all my gear on one trip. So I have to plan strategically to have all the equipment that I'll need, but then not too much extra to drag around the city. For anticipated challenges, so the ceremony location. I've never photographed a wedding in a planetarium. Dave has, so we'll have to game plan the lighting and then I'll just look for his direction and what he needs me to do. I'm going to bring all of my flashes, including a Stella continuous light, and then I'm going to bring extra light stands just in case Dave wants to use any of my flashes. I want to make sure there's just plenty of options for him. We saw an inspo pic that was really nice. And it turned out they use a continuous tube light in a huppah to light the couple without any shadows. But I don't think our couple is going to have a huppah. So we'll figure that out. Additionally, all of the photos that I see online, they have a huge moon on the planetarium ceiling. And the couple told Dave that they have new technology and now it's a big galaxy type look. And the moon's no longer an option. Which I don't know why I'd get rid of the moon, but I don't know anything about planetariums either. The coordinator said that the venue isn't allowing us to drop off any of our lighting equipment in advance. So that's why we're hoping to get a spot in the garage. So we're nice and close. The garage apparently fills up pretty quickly. Like that's mentioned on the website. The coordinator mentioned it to Dave, but I'm hoping since it's a Saturday morning in the summer that I'll be able to get there while there are still some spots. And then the weather. The current forecast has a high of 93 with a 40% chance of thunderstorms. The feels like for 2 p.m., which is the time we're doing the first look, is 105. The rain's forecasted for 6 p.m. and then tapering off. Dave did say there's a chance we could cut back on outdoor photos if the heat is too much. And he also noted that it was communicated to him that the key is not to feel rushed and to enjoy and have fun during their photos. So we'll be playing that by ear and just seeing how they're feeling. I just always think when you're spending all that money on hair and makeup, you wouldn't want to spend too much time out in this extreme weather. Things that I'm looking forward to. So I'm looking forward to working with Dave again because he really is one of my favorite photographers to work with. And I didn't realize it had been so long. I'm looking forward to shooting in a new place. So I like expanding my skill set and it should be interesting working in a planetarium. The other thing is the majority of the day is actually inside. So even though the timeline's almost 11 hours, it's really only from 2 to 4 where we could potentially be outside for, an extended period of time. Also, they have a wedding coordinator. A lot of times that just helps things go a little bit more smoothly. It looks like she's independent of the Franklin Institute. And Dave has also said she's been really nice to work with so far. So that should be good. For the night shots, I always like helping Dave with those and just seeing how he sets up behind the scenes and troubleshoots them. And then the final shot. I'm excited to see the steps and the roof locations for the night shots as well. I'm excited to use the new Stella Continuous Light. It's the one that I used in Cliff Mountner's workshop, and I really liked it for portraits. I'm hoping it's going to be an asset for outside in the sun and then also possibly in the venue. And then lastly, it's going to be my first regular long wedding with the Z8. So I'm excited to see the differences in the low light and also the 3D tracking with the autofocus. All right, I'll be back.
It's 11:25. I am on 76, headed home. Should be home in about 20 minutes. We had a good wedding. It was hot. So I got to the parking garage around 10:15 and no spots to be found. And all of a sudden I realized I had seen the same Mustang 3 times and that I was just going around in circles and that the parking garage went down rather than up. So when I went down, I found a bunch of spots. So I was able to get a decent spot with a little extra room and not too far from the elevators. I was able to just kind of walk around a little bit, see where some of the exhibits were, find the planetarium. Dave met me there and we just got caught up and then we Ubered over to the hotel. We both went up to the bridal suite. It was pretty low key. Like everyone was like not very loud. They weren't playing music or anything. Dave and I shot some details. She didn't have her invitation there, so we weren't able to do a regular flat lay. I just shot like some macro shots of the different items that we did have, like on the windowsill, just because it was weird just having like jewelry on the carpet and her shoes. I think Dave got nice shots of her dress in the window. She had a really long, beautiful veil, so I just got a couple of detail shots of that. Their wedding coordinator showed up. She was very nice. Dave had told me she was easy to work with, so we were there for a little while. The flowers showed up. They were really beautiful, a really bright, colorful color palette. The bride's was a little bit bigger and had some slightly different colors than the other ladies. And then I was really surprised that the florist, I've never seen anyone do this, and when I owned the flower shop, we never did this. He brought 2 boutonnieres for the groom to pick from and or swap out if his got a little bit beat up. And then there was a flower crown and a flower basket. But the florist made an extra flower crown because he was nervous that the one girl would see the other girl in a flower crown and she would want one. So he did that, which is really nice because flower crowns, while it's not a ton of materials, it's a ton of labor to do. So I thought that was really nice. Amy and I went up to the groom's suite. The groom was very nice. The guys were in there hanging out. Again, they were like low key. They didn't have any food in their room. They'd gone out to breakfast in the morning. They were just drinking like Coors Light, so they weren't getting wasted, which is always nice. And then their gift were, I liked it, they were cufflinks that are real small, said like Philadelphia across them. So I got some nice shots of that. We were able to do some groom portraits. And then we went downstairs a little bit ahead of time. The trolley was late. And I didn't even look at the final time, but it was about at least 20 minutes late. Amy, Dave, and I were a little bit nervous because that was obviously pushing the timeline back. And it's frustrating when it's not your fault or the bride or groom's fault or their family's fault. We got to Rittenhouse Square and I found open shade area, was able to do the groom portraits there. And then the ladies showed up. First look went well. The bridal portraits were a little bit tough because Dave had a good position for them, but then the wind picked up. It was really hot, so the wind felt good, but the wind didn't stop. And it was just whipping her veil all around. And also it was like kind of getting up under it. So it was like the veil was puffed up a little bit at the top. So it was giving First Communion vibes. So we kept like adjusting that. Dave was working around it. And then he suggested maybe they take it off. And they were like, no, we'll make it work. And then as soon as we were done and headed to the next spot, then she took it off. It is what it is. We went over and were able to get some nice group shots there. And we were able to make up our time. We went over to Lombard Street, which is a really nice, kind of like an alleyway. It's just historical looking and just feels really off the beaten path. And it feels like you're back in time. Just beautiful, nice tree-lined street. Got some really nice photos there. Towards the end, we were doing a group photo, and Dave, like everyone was lined up, and then Dave said, like everyone just, crowd around the bride and groom. But the one guy who was right next to the groom and like 2 feet taller than him made a face like he was screaming. He wasn't screaming, but it looked like he was screaming. I was looking and I was holding the flash, and everyone else was making a normal face. And this guy held it. Even when Dave was like, all right, hold on a second, and like adjusted lighting, I thought for sure this guy would stop. And he was still doing this like screaming face. So that was weird. I don't know what was going on there. I think it was the same guy too, who in the hotel lobby asked me if his eyes were bloodshot because he had rubbed wing sauce in both of his eyes accidentally the day before, and his vision was having problems. So I think it was that guy. From there, we went over to Broad Street and got nice photos of them on Broad Street in front of City Hall and headed over to the Franklin Institute. And that's where the bride looked like she was just kind of fading a little bit because it was just so hot and muggy. We were kind of supposed to reconvene and do some pictures, and then she was just relaxing and just trying to like get her second wind. So Dave and I set some stuff up. We walked through the museum, scouted a few locations, did some test shots, had some really nice places mapped out. And the bride and groom had gone through with Dave and the wedding coordinator earlier in the year. Like they had a whole appointment and walked through and picked out different exhibits that they liked. So we really thought that this was important to them. And then we met up to do family formals. We did those on the pendulum stairs, which looked really nice. And then the bride added in some more groups, which was fine because we knew she was getting all of the different family groupings that she wanted. And then when we were done, she said, oh, I think we probably have to head back down now because we've got to get lined up in a little bit. And we said, well, you still have time. It's like 45 minutes till the ceremony. And then she was like, where's Amy? I have to double check with her. So we could tell she just didn't want to do any more photos. But that's when we were supposed to do all of these different exhibit photos. And so obviously you're not going to force them, but you get nervous because you don't want someone to look back at their photos and say, oh, we wanted to do these other locations. Why didn't we do them? Or they just regret, like we asked them, you don't want to badger someone. You obviously aren't going to make someone go take photos if they don't want to, because so much of their photos is that when they're looking at them, remembering kind of how they felt when they were taking them. And if you've dragged someone along and forced them to go to various exhibits and take photos, they're going to remember that when they look at the photos. So Dave would never do that. I would never do that. but it's still kind of like you don't want to go to any of the places that we had on the list. All we said was, let's check with Amy. Amy's like, you don't have to line up until 10 till, so you have like 35 minutes. And she was like, I think I just want to go sit down. We were like, okay. We went and then got our lights set up in the planetarium and scoped that out. It was different than I remembered. I remembered it being bigger, but it was probably because I was younger when I was there. Obviously, it's still big. It's a 60 feet across, super high planetarium ceiling. And they ran us through all of the different, I'm going to call it a ceiling, all the different ceiling illuminations that they were going to have. So they had like different views for who was walking in, and then the bride had like a certain look. So we did some test shots with that and just tried to figure out, how much ambient light we wanted in the background, how wide to go, how low to get. We set our lights up. We shared light stands, which was kind of nice because then Dave was able to get like them lined up where he wanted them, and then mine were just next to his. So it was easy, less stands there. It wasn't as dark in there as I thought. I thought it was going to be like pitch black, but there was lights. They had luminary bags like down the aisles. Ceremony felt really fast. I don't think it was. I'll look at the timestamps. I don't think it was really much shorter, but content-wise, it still felt shorter. There were on either side of the bride and groom. They were up on a stage, so it was just them and the officiant, which was her brother. The bridal party was down kind of on the ground level. And on either side of the bride and groom, the florist, and these didn't match the centerpieces or the flowers, had wire stands with planters in them, and then black foam core with stars cut out, and then like fairy lights behind those, and then similar to manzanita branches, painted silver, and then crystals hanging from them, some more fairy lights, and then just a few orchid stems wired to those branches, which I didn't love. It wasn't my thing. It didn't really match anything else, but I guess it was slightly celestial. But the problem was they were big and branchy, and so that was definitely casting shadows. So that made it a little bit challenging. We'll see when we go through those photos, but Dave and I weren't crazy about those. Felt like the ceremony went quickly. Hopefully they're good. It was hard. Anytime I zoomed in with the 70 to 200 and got like a tight shot, I just didn't like it, and I kept going back to like a much wider shot. So hopefully I have enough close-up shots. Dave got a lot from the center aisle, and then I tried to move around a little bit from the outer aisles as well, but I still did like wide shots from there. There was only about 125 guests. It didn't feel that small. It felt like a normal number of tables, or, like a slightly larger wedding. But the cocktail hour space was long and skinny, which is just a little tough to try to kind of get through there. And there was not a lot of food. But we moved pretty quickly through Grip and Grins, and then the bride and groom joined cocktail hour for maybe like the last 20 minutes or so. Also, they were down one bridesmaid because she didn't realize her passport was expired. And also, the groom's sister was supposed to sing, and she, I guess, is someone who gets sick kind of easily, and she came into town a week ago and has been sightseeing all over New York City and got sick. So I think people were a little bit bummed that she then wasn't able to sing. And I realized that I never figured out who she was at the wedding. She was still at the wedding, but she just wasn't able to sing. There was just her first dance with the bride and groom, and it was nice. It was sweet. They had done really well. They had something, planned and rehearsed, and it came out really nicely. I think Dave probably has really nice shots of them, in front of the Ben Franklin statue. I was a little bit more off to the side. I got some tighter shots, a couple of wide, but I think they were mostly a little bit tighter. The groom gave a very nice, heartfelt speech, and he kind of mentioned all of the different places that people had traveled from to be there. He thanked everyone that came together. He personally thanked Dave and me by name in his speech, and it was really nice. And then he even said just some really nice things about how we'd been with them since early that morning, and he wasn't necessarily looking forward to having his picture taken because that's not like his thing. He said we made it really easy and fun, and it was just, he said very kind things, which was appreciated. And then the bride's dad gave a speech that was very nice, and that was it. There weren't other speeches. At some point, Dave checked in with the bride and groom about their other photos, and they said they were they were a little bit tired. And then someone said something about the bride, and she was kind of done with photos. And when it was time to cut the cake, Amy went over, and here, like, her makeup was like sweating off, and I think it gotten sort of like patchy or blotchy, so they were trying to fix that. And I know how that feels. Like, when you start getting sweaty, or just like you're a little bit tired, and then your makeup that you paid for is sweating off, and your hair is getting a little bit messed up, and like, it's just hard to get excited about pictures and things like that. And if you're hot, you're physically uncomfortable. So it took her a little bit to get like ready for cake cutting. And when we asked about the rooftop photos that they wanted, she said she didn't want to do them. And Dave and I were so bummed because it was just like all of these locations and spots that were on their list that they'd picked out, that Dave and I had checked out, and we're all excited to shoot. Just, they crossed them all off. Dave and I ended up going outside and scoping out like a nice nighttime shot in front of the building, which we then did go over and ask her, and she agreed to. And she was in fine spirits when we went outside. She was really pleasant to us. She thanked us. She was really happy, but I think she was just really hot. So I'm hoping they don't regret not taking some of those photos, because that would just suck. But it sucked for us because we were really excited. And also, it was like, they had said if it was too hot, they were going to cut the outdoor photos short and just do them at the Franklin Institute. So I'm kind of like, I hope they love the outdoor photos, because in retrospect, it was like, we could have skipped one or two of those places and just come back to the venue, not gotten as hot and sweaty, and you may have had more energy to continue to different locations. But you know what? It all works out. So hopefully they got exactly the number of photos that they're going to be happy with. And then the DJ was great. David worked with him before. He was really good. And there was no CO2 cannon. The museum wouldn't let him use it, but he had it in his car. He so badly wanted to use that CO2 cannon. I wanted to see it too. And then annoying, there's no need for inflatable guitars and saxophones. I mean, reception dancing photos are bad enough with all of the limbs and the beer bottles and the wine glasses. When you just add huge, brightly colored plastic inflatable instruments, then they're just, don't need it. Don't need it. I'm probably thinking of 8 million other things I'm probably forgetting 8 million other things. They had their announced cake cutting. They went over, they cut the cake. They just cut it. They didn't even take a piece out, and then they were laughing. But they didn't feed it to each other, which is fine. But it's kind of like, then, but why even announce it if you're not going to do that part? So that was fine. But they were like still laughing and in good spirits. So they seemed happy all night. I think the groom held on better than she did. I think she just got a little bit hot. And obviously, I feel like it's different for women. It's hard to still feel pretty when you're just kind of sweaty like that. I've been at weddings where someone just gets cranky or drunk and they're huffy or whatever. And they weren't like this at all. They were really nice. It was just warm. I think that's it. So the parking worked out really well. The weather was what we expected. It didn't rain while we were outside. Maybe it would have been better if it did, and it would have forced us inside. But that, and I forget what the lighting. It was tricky. It wasn't as dark as we thought it was going to be. So we'll see. I'll go through and see those photos. That was it. All right. I'm tired. I drank a ton of water. I went and did an IV with vitamins and nutrients yesterday to prepare because I knew if I wasn't hydrated enough, I would just quickly get depleted and lethargic today. So I wanted to come in fully hydrated. And then I drank a lot of water. I didn't drink that much caffeine today. I just really tried to drink a lot of water. But I still feel really sweaty and gross, and I can't wait to take a shower. And that's it. I will see what these photos came out like.
So I took a look at the photos, and over 10 and a half hours, I shot 1,202 photos. So that was 114 an hour, which was a good number. It's definitely lower than my average, but I was being really mindful of not overshooting. And also, because we were using flash during the ceremony, I was more conservative than I normally would be. Also, they cut out a lot of portraits. They didn't have entrance photos for the bridal party. There was only one first dance, 2 speeches, and not as much party dancing. So the areas where we normally are firing off a lot of shots, those were reduced. So I think that also brought the average down. Other things that went well, the driving and parking worked out great. I had enough gear. I didn't feel like I was missing anything. We ended up only being outside for less than 90 minutes, and that was in and out of the limo as well. It didn't rain. The bride had a beautiful smile. We did really well with the timeline, and we had time to set up our light stands and move them, and we weren't overly rushed with that. The coordinator, the venue staff, and the DJ were all great. The venue validated our parking, so we didn't have to pay. Dave, Amy, and I had a really nice time, and we worked well together. There were no videographers. The vendor meal was really good. The venue itself had a really nice open floor plan, so you could move around easily, and there weren't any bottlenecks with the guests. It also made it easy to move around for speeches to get different angles and just opposing viewpoints from Dave. Also, I was mindful to get shots of the older guests that were seated at their tables and not on the dance floor. I'm always trying to make sure I'm capturing them as well, and I feel like I did a good job with that. Also, the planetarium wasn't as big or as dark as I was remembering. The gorgeous flowers held up in the hot weather, all the bouquets and the boutonnieres. The groom's very thoughtful speech was incredibly nice. I'm loving the Z8. So far, I do think it's performing better in low light. And I didn't change the batteries in my cameras. They lasted all day. I did set up a third flash, so I didn't have as many dark spots on the dance floor. So I had my 2 lights going across, and then I just brought a third one for a little bit more fill. And then I did have my on-camera flashes, but I don't like to have them cranked super high. We did get to use the Stella, but it was only for the nighttime exterior shot that we did. And then I also remember to put in my earplugs at the end of cocktail hour. I always have them and never remember them. Things that didn't go as well, as we expected, the weather was super hot and humid, and that took a toll on the bride. The limo bus was at least 20 minutes late to pick us up at the hotel. So luckily we were able to make up that time. In Rittenhouse Square during the bridal party portraits, we had several carpenter bees that were really interested in the bouquets. So it made it difficult for those ladies to focus. We had a groomsman that was making a face that looked like a nonstop yawn or a silent scream, which was odd. I had seen it at the one location, but it wasn't until I was going through my photos that I realized he was doing that at another location as well. So I have no idea what was going on with that. I still had a few shots with missed focus, but I feel like it was during really fast moments or transition moments, and maybe I was just moving too quickly. The planetarium was tough to shoot in. The bride and groom were further back on the stage than I had anticipated, which made it harder for the lights to reach them. We had set them up anticipating them to be a little bit closer to the edge of the stage. Additionally, because they had those tree branches with the crystals, those then also cast shadows because then they were behind them a little bit more. The bride and groom were behind those branches. The 20 to 30 minute ceremony was only 14 minutes, so that didn't give us a ton of time to make adjustments to the flashes and get a variety of shots. And we did have a dad with a camera, a DSLR, and an on-camera flash. And the biggest thing was the couple, mostly the bride, just deciding that she didn't want any of the bride and groom portraits with the museum exhibits or their nighttime rooftop shot. So we only got that one exterior shot of the building. And I have thought about it every day since. It has really kind of bummed me out just thinking about it. So moving forward, I definitely liked the idea of sharing light stands with Dave, especially if you're in the city. It worked out really well. If I didn't have to bring all of my light stands. And then I'm excited to use Estella in some other lighting scenarios to see how it goes. We just didn't have too many opportunities. So that's it. If you're still listening, that means you made it through the whole episode. So thank you very much. And if you haven't already, please follow this podcast. And if you can, I'd appreciate an honest rating and review. Thanks again. Stay focused.
Thanks for listening to A Second Helping. Please like and subscribe. I won't let this moment pass us by.